question. Tonight's candidate forum includes mayoral and ward candidates for wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm Marna Shillman, a member of the League and moderator this evening for the program that will begin shortly. Since 1920, the League of Women Voters has provided nonpartisan, especially focused on voter registration and voter information programs. Programs like this one tonight, and like our voter information website, vote411.org. And incidentally, 411.org has information from all the candidates in this forum this evening. A big thank you to the voter service team of the League of Larimer County, as well as the City of Loveland for all the help they're giving us, including broadcasting this forum tonight and several times before the election November 3rd. They'll also rebroadcast the program several times. To vote for candidates in this election, you must reside in Loveland for at least 22 days prior to the election and be registered to vote. To vote for the two ballot issues regarding Downtown Development Association, you must be registered to vote and a resident, a landlord, or a leasee within the DDA boundaries. This election will be conducted by mail by the Larimer County. They will mail ballots the week of October 12th. They must receive ballots from you by 7 p.m. election day at their election headquarters or a prescribed drop-off place. Postmarks do not count as a received date. Before mailing your ballot in, please remember to sign it, and please remember to affix 70 cents in postage. That's 2 first-class stamps. Information about polling centers and ballot drop-off locations and other election information can be found at the Larimer County election webpage. Please do not give your ballot to anyone you don't know to deliver it to you. Please deliver it yourself or have it delivered by someone you trust so that it gets counted the way you want it to be counted. In Loveland, council members are elected for 4-year terms, and the mayor is elected for a 2-year term. There are no term limits. Each council member is elected only by the voters in his or her ward. The mayor, however, is elected by everyone in the city. In this election, only wards 1, 2, and 4 are contested races. Ward 3 and the mayoral race are not. To see which ward you live in, go to the municipal election webpage of the Loveland City website. Now for the forum ground rules. Each candidate will have a minute and a half to introduce themselves and explain why they're running. After that, each candidate will be given a minute to answer the questions, most of which come from you in the audience and which are screened to avoid duplication. Question answering begins on the audience left with Cecil Gutierrez, and we rotate answering questions to the right. This continues throughout question answering. When we conclude, candidates will have a minute to wrap up, but this time we'll start on the left with Ralph Trineri, and he will begin with concluding remarks. So, let's get started. Cecil, if you'll please begin, will you please introduce yourself, explain why you're running, and your qualifications?
Yes, well, thank you very much, Marna. And first of all, I would like to take a moment to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and to all of you for participating here in the chambers as well as on TV. I'm Cecil Gutierrez, and as your mayor these past 6 years, I have dedicated myself to building relationships and securing opportunities that are beneficial to our entire community. Together, we have achieved many goals and created unprecedented momentum here in Loveland. We are in a position to take advantage of the recovery and some of that momentum. Infrastructure improvement has been a priority, and we have dealt with those tough decisions. Improving infrastructure will continue to be an ongoing process. We have worked to improve the development review process, developed strategic plans for economic development citywide and downtown revitalization. Having taken these important steps, taking advantage of development opportunities will be much easier. It is important to celebrate our successes like Gallery Flats and Art Space and the creation of the Northern Colorado Regional Airport Commission. But we must continually strive to be better. Prioritizing our tax dollars will be critical while continuing our long tradition of fiscal responsibility.
Thank you. I need to stop you. Thank you. Richard?
I'm Richard Ball. I love this city. I'm a lifelong resident of Loveland. I came back after going to school, and I've been a businessman in Loveland for nearly 35 years. As an attorney, I also for many years held a real estate license. I feel that I've demonstrated by being president of many organizations in this community that I have leadership ability, that I have the ability to bring consensus to the table, to work with folks, and to get things done. This was brought up to me over a year ago when two of the more conservative gentlemen on the city council in separate times came to me and said, "Rich, would you run for city council? We need your voice." Well, that was a compliment, and I considered it. Knowing that Chauncey Taylor would not be running again, I decided, yes, this is my time. I'm semi-retired. I'd hate to try to take on this duty with a full-time job. I believe I have the experience that's necessary. I think it's important to remember as a councilman that it is not about our agenda, our personal agenda. No, it's about getting things done, working with each other, working with 8 other individuals on the council and the mayor and the staff. And by doing so, bringing about a consensus, doing the right thing and getting the job done without bickering. And I hope I can bring civility to this position. Thank you.
Thanks. Patrick?
I'm Patrick McFall. I've been a resident of Loveland for 25 of the last 28 years. Until that time, I really never had a sense of community when I moved to Loveland. I moved around a lot when I was a kid, went to 3 different high schools, 3 different states when I was a freshman, not because my dad couldn't hold a job, but because he was in the Army and it was the Vietnam era. I then spent 22 years in the Marine Corps, decided Loveland was the home I was going to be at, the place I was going to be, came here to raise my 2 children along with my wife, and have been here ever since. I find that I have a sense of duty and a sense of service that I believe is honorable, and I feel that there's a need to give back for what I've gotten. I've received 25 years of a really good life to bring my children into here, and I like what's going on in this community, or I liked what was going on in this community. I don't really want to see it lose its own inner ability. I bring a lot of products to the table for us. I have over 40 years of leadership experience. I have the ability to be a collaborator even in some of the worst situations, both in business and in the military. I have the ability to sit down and analyze things and find solutions to problems that are always out there. And I have a management skill that is above all and second to none. I believe that those are some of the skills that need to be brought to our council, to bring some civility back to the council, to bring a stewardness of our tax dollars back to the council where I feel that we don't have it today. That's what I'm bringing to you, and I'm hoping to get your vote for the election. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah?
Hi. My name is Leah Johnson, and I'm running for city council because I love Loveland, and anyone who knows me can attest to that. I grew up in this town. It was a tremendous place to grow up, and now I'm choosing to raise my family here because Loveland has a quality of life that is second to none to any other community in this country. And I moved back here in 2008 and have been very active in many things in our community. And I have a record of bringing people together. Together in this community, I have worked with the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado to help create projects like the Rialto Theater Center expansion and Art Space Loveland. I worked with leaders and philanthropic leaders in this community to help create Alternatives to Violence Safe House here that now will house 8 families of women and children who are victims of domestic violence. Recently, I worked with leaders from the Chamber of Commerce to other downtown businesses to help to pass the Downtown Development Authority. And I've been very active in downtown development and encouraging the revitalization. But more than that, I am passionate about doing what's right for our community. I have a long family history of service. My dad's been a businessman here for 30 years. My mom served on the school board. And there is nothing more valuable to my family than making sure we are making the decisions that are constantly putting Loveland first. And I will be that person. Thank you.
Thanks. Buddy?
Good evening. My name's Buddy Myers. I've lived in Loveland for 23 years. I came back in 1995 and have been here for 20 years. Prior to that, I was here from 1983 to 1986. I've served 8 years on the Planning Commission for the City of Loveland. 3 of those years I served as the chairperson, and I'm the only individual ever to serve 3 years or 3 terms as the chair. I'm selected to run for this office because I bring a holistic view to the city. You know, I may be elected by the Ward 2 citizens, but I serve the entire broad city. All the citizens are who I represent if I'm elected to this office and sit behind this dais. My background, I've spent time as in executive positions as chief financial officer, chief information officer for large global companies. I was the COO of a development company building real estate in Park County and in Summit County. I've got an extensive background in various senior management positions in human resources, sales and marketing with also large corporations. And it's that holistic view and being able to understand how to solve problems, build a coalition of individuals that are focused on multiple goals, not a single focused area, that I believe that I can bring to the council and help drive and direct where we're headed as a city, working with the other 8 members of the city council in a collaborative fashion. Thank you very much.
Thanks. John?
Well, my name is John Fogel. Excuse me. I'm the one that taught him to do it. My name is John Fogel. I serve as the Ward 3 counselor along with my friend Hugh McKean. We're one of 2 counselors that serve in that ward, and we're offset by 2-year terms. So I'm up for re-election. And I'm the luckiest person sitting at this dais, save the mayor, in that I don't have to worry about being re-elected because nobody chose to run against me. That is by far the finest compliment as a politician or as an individual, and most especially as a citizen of Loveland, that I could ever receive from anybody in this town. Now I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm running again, and that's because I've got so many irons in the fire. The Loveland Fire Rescue Authority, of which I'm a charter board member, we're moving towards making the fire department an independent authority that represents not only the community of Loveland, but the community around us in the rural fire district. I'm a charter board member of the Downtown Development Authority. You'll be hearing more about that, I'm sure, as the questions are asked up here. And we move towards having the ballot issues pass this year to create the Downtown Development Authority and move the downtown area forward. I'm also on the Historic Preservation Commission. And we just announced Historic Downtown Loveland, which has been a 20-year project, and we've culminated it here in the last 3. It will effectively help downtown for many, many decades to come. I'm also on the organizing committee for the Broadband Initiative. You'll be hearing more about that here in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thanks. Don?
Hi, I'm Don Overcash. I've been a resident of Loveland for nearly a decade. And over the past several months, actually the past year or so, I've been listening to Loveland residents and business owners. And their comments have helped convince me that it's time to step forward and do something about some of the situations that we have here in Loveland. We have a flourishing community, and we need to keep it flourishing. But I think what the council can use is not just a better leader, but a different kind of leader for the next 4 years. Here are some of the things that I've been hearing. People are frustrated that sometimes the council appears to operate without a clear vision. They're concerned about wasting or misusing their tax dollars. They're aggravated the council is not staying on top of some of the important issues of the city, such as streets. Businesses existing and new are actually ticked off. They're claiming that while we are business friendly, their actual experiences in expanding or bringing their business to Loveland were anything but pro-jobs. It was a very difficult process, and we can certainly do better. So why Don? Well, a lesson I learned a few years ago is not about me. It's about serving people. Now, I know you heard that, but this is based on my belief in a creator who has given each of us abilities, talents, skills, and even life itself. and that those skills and that life itself are to be used to serve people, His creation. I've been in the business of serving people since my first business ownership in 1978. My wife and I bought a pharmacy. Since then, I've led 5 businesses, and they've all been managed under the same 3 statements. Do the right thing, do it right, and do right by the people all the time. If the voters of Ward 4 agree that I bring a different kind of leadership.
Stop you. Thanks, Don. Thanks so much. Ralph?
Thank you, Marna, and thank you, everybody with the League of Women Voters who put this forum together. My name's Ralph Trineri. I moved the family home to Loveland in 2006, but I think I married into Loveland in 1985 because my wife's family has only been here for 158 years. I married into the Hirschman family. For the last 4 years, since the Ward 4 voters gave me the honor and privilege of representing them on this city council, I've worked very hard to make all decisions and take actions in the best interests of the entire community. I've made a decision to run for election because I think Loveland has to stay on top of everyone's list of the best places to live, work, and enjoy Colorado. High-paying jobs, the retention of our good businesses, helping them grow, and attracting the best possible businesses have to be imperatives for everyone who serves on the city council. And I always believe and have been available whenever possible throughout these 4 years to celebrate the successes of Loveland, because if you know what is going right, you can keep it happening. In the 4 years that would follow, if the voters will allow me to work for them for that time, I want to make sure that our finances are protected and continue to be strong. In fact, I believe continue to be the envy of the entire state of Colorado. I want to bring the fiber optic broadband to Loveland so that we can enter the 21st century as a flourishing and competitive community. I don't think we should give up on economic development. We still have a lot to learn, and we can keep Loveland a great place to live.
I need to start. Thanks, Ralph. And now we're going to start with Richard. Richard, may I ask you, in order of importance, what are the 3 top priorities you want to address if elected? Please give us 1, 2, 3, and why. Thanks.
My first priority of my platform is to bring primary jobs back or increase them into the city of Loveland. I grew up here when Hewlett-Packard was a primary employer, and the benefits were many-fold. I want to help the broadband initiative be passed and be enacted. I think we're behind the game on that. Longmont's way ahead of us. This is good for business. It's good for our schools. It's an important thing. The third is, I think, to bring the South Catalyst project to fruition. I think it is a very vital project. I think it's important. I think it takes a lot of work. A lot of work's been done, but a lot of leadership needs to be undertaken in order to bring it online. And I think I have the ability to do that. I think it's an important thing for not only Loveland, but the entire city.
Thanks, Richard. Patrick?
First 3. 1, I want to get the city out of the real estate business. I think we've done a terrible job of buying and selling real estate out there. We have some really good examples that have hit it. We've spent double the amount of money for buildings that were valued at half their value that we've then turned around and haven't done anything else with. So I want to do that. As Richard said, I'd like to bring primary jobs back to Loveland. I want to have the ability for my kids to be able to make a choice to live and work and afford to live in the city of Loveland itself. And last but not least, I want to be able to put a more well-rounded look on what we're doing with the city of Loveland. I believe the perception that's outside of the downtown area is that we're spending all of our money downtown. And I do believe it's a perception. I think we're spending money elsewhere. I think we're doing a terrible job of letting our citizens know what we're doing and how we're dealing with the tax dollars that they trust us with. So those are the things that I'm looking to take care of.
Thanks. Leah?
Great. Well, first and foremost, achievable housing. While we have affordable housing in our community, I have a concern as a young family that there is not enough inventory on the market to ensure that we are creating housing that young families and first responders and those people who serve our community are able to purchase housing and live in our community. And so I think that addressing The gap between affordable housing and where the market currently is very important. I also concur that jobs, making sure that we're attracting good paying jobs that continue to make our community thrive, continuing the strong economic development that we have as a community to attract those jobs and leverage our taxpayer dollars to really ensure that we are getting strong private investment in our community is important. And I also feel that we need to really focus on the infill development of 287 and 34. Thank you.
Thanks. Buddy?
The top three, first of all, I think is solving this problem we have in this town called the Tale of Three Cities. We have the downtown area, we have the east side of the city, and then we have the rest of the town. We've got to take a holistic approach to how we view and how we spend the money across this city. That includes how we use our incentive packages to attract businesses. Creating primary jobs is an easy term to say. I've created primary jobs through the things I've done in industry. We've got to leverage incentives. We've got to make this a place where businesses want to move, where they know that their employees can flourish with their families. That may mean we need to collaborate and work with the Thompson Valley School District to improve the quality of schools so that it's a place they want to put their children at, to go to school in this community. And we've got to make those investments in our infrastructure, streets, broadband if that's where the citizens decide to go, our power grid that we've got in the city, that we've still got a ton of above ground lines in this city. They're not very attractive to businesses. And we've got to figure out a way to leverage that airport out there for more than 1 or 2 flights a week. That is a gem out there that we can use for a lot of things. Thank you.
Great. John?
3 things in about a minute, so I'm going to concentrate on the ones that are near and dear to my heart. The Downtown Development Authority serves to do one purpose with the ballot initiatives that you're seeing this year, and that is return control of the downtown area to people that live, work, and rent in that downtown area. I want to see that initiative passed, and I want to see that initiative taken forward. The Downtown Development Authority offers the whole downtown area, from North Tip to South Tip, the opportunity to expand beyond anything we've ever imagined. My other initiative is the broadband initiative. We'll be talking about that more in a minute. The Downtown South Catalyst project, for a movement that's only been actually possible for less than 90 days, I think it's moving together rather well. So I want to see that through, and it's one of the main reasons that I'm rerunning for office. Thank you.
Thanks. Don?
I'd like to see Loveland create a sustainable competitive advantages where businesses and families want to move here because of the infrastructure and the services and quality of life that we provide here. So by creating a pro-business environment, I'd like to take a look at the fees and permitting process and make that more business-friendly. Of course, we need to improve our infrastructure. Traffic east-west is not going well. Eisenhower's backed up 3/4 of the day. We need to address some other routes. From what I understand, we have $50 million worth of repairs in streets, and it's pretty tough to catch up with our current budgets. We need to solve that. And then lastly, the South Catalyst project. It needs some vision. It needs some direction. Right now, we own $4.5 million of real estate, and there's no care plan. I think we need to bring those things to conclusion and forward.
Thanks. Ralph?
Thank you. For 8 years now, I've been part of both a volunteer panel and the city council focused on what is strong and what is successful in the financial structure, the practices and the traditions of Loveland. I want to be able to keep doing that, and I think that that's an overriding priority so that Loveland is always an attractive business partner, that we are a strong financial partner with businesses that will want to stay and grow in Loveland and want to come to Loveland. We have to keep the economic development pipeline full. We have to stay on top of those attractive lists for the location and the growth of businesses. And we have to realize the potential for the airport. For 4 years now, I've been at the airport. I've been talking with the business owners. I've been talking with the pilots. We have enormous amount of untapped potential on the airport grounds and in the private property adjacent to the airport. And it all ties in, and it has kind of the shining core of Loveland as the downtown.
Thanks. Cecil?
I can get my mic to turn on. 3 things. Transportation is probably key. I've been working on the I-25 to get that expanded. Have worked with CDOT, have worked with the North Front Range MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. I forget about the alphabet soup. Working with elected officials of different groups and different sorts that to work on trying to solve that I-25 funding solution. Been the chair of the Highway 287 Coalition, where we have actually been able to get some things done on 287. Economic development needs to be continued and continue strong as it has been, balanced. Highway 287, we're about done with that plan. Highway 402, Highway 34, downtown, the Regional Tourism Authority, and the airport, which I have been involved in all of those at some level. And then public safety is the other one that we've always got to be conscious of. We need to continue with the fire authority and continue to work on our police.
Patrick, I'm going to start with you. We're going to ask a question about the ballot question 2C, broadband. The question asks the voters whether they would be willing to start studying bringing broadband in as a Loveland utility, my word, utility. Two parts to this question. Do you support this ballot question? Actually, three parts. Do you support this ballot question? What would it mean for Loveland if it's passed? What are the consequences if it's not passed?
Well, you asked me a really good question. Since I'm the acting chief information officer for veterinary services for the Department of Agriculture, technology is near and dear to my heart itself. I think broadband is an extremely good thing to get into. I was extremely happy when I first started seeing fiber being laid in the city of Loveland itself. Whether the city should get into the broadband business or not, I'd need to look at a little bit more information that was on the table itself. If we're talking about bringing broadband downtown and having it there, one answer is there. If we're talking about giving broadband or making broadband available to everybody in the city, I have a problem with government controlling that much information itself. We just had a huge breach of OPM where 24 million people's information was let out. Government was in control of that at that time, so I'd really have to look at it itself. So in saying I support broadband, yes, I do. Whether I think I'd support it all the way through, I'd have to look at it just a little bit more than what we've got there.
Thanks. Leah?
Yes. Well, to your question of do I support the ballot initiative, yes. I believe that it would be beneficial for our community to be able to look at options for Loveland to either in a public partnership or as a public utility to see if it's something that would work for our community. And that's what's currently on the ballot, is just simply to allow us to explore that option. And I think that that's an important thing. I think it is important because communities around us are doing it. And something we need to realize is we don't live in a vacuum in Loveland. We are in a region here that is very competitive, and we have to make sure that we are continually being competitive with the communities around us to attract the jobs here to Loveland. And broadband is just another one of those tools that allows us to make sure we can put together a full package that will encourage businesses and good jobs to come here to Loveland. So I absolutely support the exploration of figuring out what the best solution is for Loveland.
I need to stop you. Thank you. Buddy.
Yes, can you restate part B of the question?
Yes. Part A, do you support it? Part B, what would it mean for Loveland if passed? Part C, what are the consequences if not passed?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, anytime that the voters, the citizens, the taxpayers get a chance to weigh in and vote on something to say, we'd like to have you look at it, wow, government at work of a representative government. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I do support that. The consequences of what it would mean to the city if passed, well, it's a study. It means it gives us the opportunity and the approval from the citizens under State Bill 152 to go out and consider what it takes to have broadband. We can determine what our quality of service may be, what it may cost in regards to rates and to implement and install. What are our challenges? What's the difference between fiber when it goes to copper wire, and how's the speeds drop down when you service to homes? The consequences of not passing it, it means we don't have a leverage point to either negotiate with a Comcast, CenturyLink, or AT&T in its new version, because they've got plans to bring something on like this soon. Having this in our pocket gives the city a negotiating tool to improve the quality of service we get from our existing vendors.
Thanks. John?
On the broadband initiative, anybody that's been around me for the last year or so has no doubt that I do support it. I support it wholeheartedly. In 2005, a consortium of large telecom companies, we all know those big names, basically created a monopoly for themselves with Senate Bill 152. They spent multiple millions of dollars petitioning the state through their resources to have this bill put in place, not only in Colorado, but in 18 other centralized states. Most of those states are working heartily to try to overturn their versions of this bill. What it means to Loveland, we're not going to create a broadband company. We're not going to do anything. Just as Buddy just said, we're going to study it. It unshackles our hands and lets us study what's going to come and what is available for the citizens of Loveland. The consequences if we don't do it are very simple. In the northern Colorado area, we will wither and die on the economic development vine. It's that simple.
Thanks. Don?
Yes, earlier I mentioned that one of my desires is to see Loveland become a community where people and businesses want to move to. And I think utilities is one of those areas that attract them. So in supporting the initiative, absolutely, I think we should take a look and study it. So I support the initiative. What would it mean if we don't pass the initiative to look at it? We're going to miss an opportunity. So I encourage the citizens to vote for that initiative so we can investigate it further. But I'm really concerned about how it's done and then how it's funded. And that's the part I agree with Leah. We need to study that and have a better understanding so that we have a full understanding of intended as well as unintended consequences to decisions that we make. Thank you.
Thanks. Ralph?
Thank you, everybody. For over a year now, I've put a lot of effort and time into learning about broadband. I absolutely support it as being something that's in the best interest of Loveland's businesses, our schools, and for the people of Loveland who have any connection, concern, or looking for opportunities on the internet. The difference between a community that has fiber optic broadband and those that do not is stark, it's ominous, and it is not a bright future. Across the state of Colorado, there are enormous success stories of who is able to pull it together and who is not. The positives are all of those opportunities for growth. The consequences, we just will be left behind. There's no other way to put it. And I think the ballot measure is correct in that it starts out by saying without raising taxes. This is going to be an initiative for the benefit of the businesses and for the benefit of the schools, but only for those who want it.
Thanks. Cecil?
I'm not used to turning it on and off. I usually never turn it off. Yes, I support this initiative, and really, it's been stated before. This gives us local control again, and John laid it out pretty well for you as to how this Senate Bill 152 came about, giving us the opportunity to figure out how we, as a city, want to have this done. So just getting the ballot initiative passed gives us the opportunity to do that. What would it mean to the city of Loveland? The way business is done anymore, a lot of businesses now moving to town have employees that work from home. The upload speeds, the download speeds, all of those kinds of things are important. The consequences of not doing it is a lack of competitiveness. Longmont is actually way down the road with this already. They passed the initiative. They've got broadband
So
as
I
a
need
public
to
utility.
stop you. Thank you. Richard?
Well, I think we have a consensus up here on this. I urge the voters to vote yes on this broadband initiative. It's really about competition. It gives the city of Loveland the ability to deal with multiple franchisee holders down in the future so that we don't have just one such franchise holder like we do with Comcast in this case. I was at a planning retreat for the city council in January when this was brought up, and John and Ralph were both ahead of the game on this, but the city staff had said we need to bring this about. There was a citizen there who spoke who had an interest in manufacturing helicopters out at the airport. And he brought up the fact from the business standpoint that this is just critical. So I think this is a no-brainer. I think we say yes to this, we approve it on the ballot, and then we have a lot of work ahead of us to determine what to do with it exactly.
Thanks. Leah, I'm going to start with you for the next question. Several Colorado communities are adopting climate action plans. Should Loveland create one or adopt one? Why or why not?
I think there's nothing more important than ensuring that we protect our quality of life in a community. And so I think that as we explore various things in our community that impact it, whether it be our water or our air quality, our open lands, all of those things are very important. And so I think that, you know, as a community, if it's a collective thing that the citizens of Loveland and the voters of Loveland and the taxpayers of Loveland are asking for, then I absolutely would be in favor of something like that. I think that there's nothing more important than making sure that we are protecting our community for our future generations. I have a small daughter, and I want to make sure that her water quality and air quality is as good as it is today and the future. And so I would continue to explore options to make sure that that happens.
Thank you. Buddy.
This is the Planning Commission challenge too. There we are. You know, environmental action plans it's an interesting word or concept. The city of Loveland, I think, has been a leader in this space a little bit already. You know, we've had an award-winning leader in our recycling program to the point of where folks don't even want to take our stuff anymore because there's so much of it. We're doing such a great job. We've got a LEED program that we're implementing within our development review process as folks build out buildings. That's a specific standard about renewable energy and energy-efficient products. We also have good things going on with our electric department, and our wastewater management standards are extremely high, that the water that goes back into our rivers is better than the water that we bring in. I think that action plans are interesting, but they can also be buzzwords. We need to look at what that really means in regards to the city, but I think we've already got some really good things going on here. Thank you.
Thanks. John?
When it comes to adopting a climate action plan, generating paperwork really isn't about what I do. Generating an action plan is just that. It's generating paperwork to make a statement to a broad group of people. I hope that that same broad group of people already know that climate sensitivity and good stewardship of our environment is the most important thing we can do here. As something that I do, okay, I support the things that promote the climate. We're spending $30 million upgrading our water treatment facility over the course of the next few years to change the quality of the water we put back in the river. The other one that I think is paramount is traffic, because we can talk all we want about climate, but if we have everybody sitting in traffic jams on Highway 34 on their way home or on their way into our city, the rest is all a moot point. City Council is now just in the study session on Tuesday night, is appropriating extra money towards fixing the problem in the traffic on 34.
Thanks so much. Don?
I think we're all in favor of clean water, clean air, and taking care of our land. It's a resource that we all value. But I think it's also buzzwords. I agree totally with what Buddy and John have been saying. I think the city is doing a great job in protecting those resources. And I also think it's a matter of priorities. The city has a responsibility to provide for public safety, transportation, utilities, which we're addressing in our use of our natural resources, and public amenities with open space. So I think we should be paying attention to those particular areas and not get wrapped up into a politically correct, let's develop another action plan and follow the path of other cities and wasting time and precious resources.
Thanks. Ralph?
All the things that you've heard talked about now are explanations of areas where Loveland has already been a leader, where Loveland has already put in place very strong programs having to do with our fresh water, with our power, with our solid waste, the open lands and land conservation, recycling. I mean, just look at the Wilson Avenue Recycling Center and everything that is accomplished over there. In the last year, I was very pleased to see that the Loveland City Council took an aggressive stance on wastewater treatment, so that the water that we put back into the Big Thompson River is as safe and as clean as possible for the downstream users of that water. What is good in all of these areas is good for people, it's also good for business. And I really don't care if it has the title on the list of Climate Action Plan or if it has the title of that's just the way that Loveland does it. And I think we should keep doing it, and it's one of the responsibilities that I would accept as a member of the City Council for 4 more years.
Thanks. Cecil.
Yeah, climate action plans are interesting, and I've actually been involved in writing one for Platte River Power Authority, and I can tell you that those are always very interesting discussions. Sometimes what I will tell you about climate action plans that get written is that they have I guess, place false expectations on what will happen when. And that's what I would be concerned about developing a climate action plan. I have worked hard at Platte River Power Authority to try to increase our renewable energy. We've added 60 megawatts of wind. We added 30 new megawatts of solar that'll come online at the end of this year. So there are ways for us to do a lot of this, but I'm not sure that climate action plan is necessarily the way to go.
Thanks. Richard.
I would sort of take the lead of what the citizens and the residents feel. I mean, if there's a group of folks that want to spend the time and energy and become activated about a climate action plan and bring something to the city council, fine. I think I'd like to throw out some kudos to our staff here at the city. I mean, we have some of the best staff folks, certainly in Colorado and the nation. They go to these national conferences. I mean, we were years ahead with our recycling program. We got honors for that. And like most of my comrades up here and Leah have said, we're doing things really well right now, I think. I think we're focused on it. We're doing it without a so-called plan. And I think those plans sometimes sit on someone's bookshelf. And they just take a lot of time and energy. And I don't know that the council needs to do that. But if the citizens want to come forward with an initiative and try and do all the planning and action without a lot of staff time, then fine. But I think we're doing good.
Okay, thanks. Patrick.
In 1966, there was a federal law called the Government Paper Elimination Act. As we all know, the government still runs on paper and still does what it can. I can show you plans, closets full of them, that haven't done any good. I think my colleagues up here have said it pretty good. Loveland does a really good job of leading not only our own community, but the communities around us, and how well we do as far as recycling and clean water and everything else. If we continue on that route, I think we'll continue to grow, we'll continue to get better, and Loveland will continue to be the stellar place that it is today. I don't believe doing a climate action plan is going to help us along that way. Matter of fact, I think it's going to sit and collect dust with all the other ones out there.
Thank you. Buddy, I'm going to ask you as the first person to talk about downtown development. 2-part question. What is your position on the Downtown South Catalyst project? Part B, do you support, what's your feeling about the Larimer County building being downtown?
Okay. Position on the South Catalyst project. You know, the city's got $6 million. And when I say the city, that's the citizens invested in this project. We need to do something with that project to make it happen and use that as a driver to pull in some type of businesses in that area. But we need to be cautious on what we do. There's been discussions about parking. There's been discussions about what's coming there. I think a county court facility of some sort, a county courthouse or a county facility is important to have. I am concerned about the mission that's being brought to those facilities. Moving the motor vehicle department is one thing, but the other types of punitive portions of the criminal justice system that are being brought downtown is not necessarily what I would bring to a major downtown area. So do your work, do your study to understand what the probation department in the adult area brings. Do your work and understand what the alternative methods of sentencing. I serve on an advisory board to Sheriff Smith at the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. You'll find out what it is, and it's not what we should have downtown. Thank you.
Thanks. John?
Now it's on. My position on the Downtown Development Authority, of course, I'm a charter board member of it, so I support it completely. As far as my position on the South Catalyst project, I support it wholeheartedly. This is the opportunity for Loveland to change forever. This will change our downtown area forever. It has had problems, but quite simply, this has been a pipe dream right up until June 30th of this year. Because for those of you that watched council the other night and saw the map of the properties that we've procured, the linchpin property was only finally closed on June 30th. We've spent, a year doing property negotiations. As far as my position on South Catalyst, I absolutely want to see it go forward. And my position on the county building, I want to see the citizens have what they want. But we need to work with the county to see if we can make this happen. I just don't want it to be unbelievably expensive or put things in the downtown area that people just don't want to see there.
Thanks so much. Don?
4 years ago, I moved my business from the Centera area to downtown Loveland on 7th Street in Cleveland. I love the downtown area. I shop there, eat there 2, 3, 4 times a week. So I'd like to see the downtown area redeveloped. Regarding the South Catalyst project, I think that's an example of ready, fire, aim. There's a lack of vision that's been laid out, as well as in direction, and then a plan to make it happen. I think we've gotten ahead of ourselves, but it's not too late. We can go back and capture that, and I think we need to focus on that. When it comes to the courthouse building, I had a drugstore in a town with a courthouse, and it was great for business. It was great for the downtown area. But the courthouse didn't provide the types of services that this particular facility is being scheduled to have. Fort Collins intentionally had their building downtown, but not those services. They moved them elsewhere. So I'm very concerned about what the nature of that would be, as well as the cost to the city. Thank you.
Ralph?
I think it's time for Loveland to see positive action at all 4 corners of the downtown. The South Catalyst is a very important part of that. We finally got the anchor on the west side to match this anchor on the east side. The South Catalyst is the key to pulling the energy and pulling the potential for the downtown at that end of the compass, and then also puts us along the road to what could be done at the north end. We need to keep the good services that we expect from the county in downtown Loveland. We have to recognize that there is a lot of time left in just that one little half block that involves the county building, but then also to realize the years and multiple plans and programs that have been put together for what could be the south part of our downtown. There is no lack of vision. There's lack of memory for what's already been put together, and to look at it again and make it a reality.
Thanks. Cecil?
Yes, I've spent, it seems like, my last decade on downtown. What everybody needs to understand is that last decade we have gone through iterations of alphabet soup. I spent 6 years on the Loveland Downtown team developing vision, developing studies, developing plans, and developing all of the things that we were going to need to take a look at revitalization of downtown. A particular project takes time, it takes a developer, it takes the city's willingness to be a partner, and what goes there will ultimately depend on that private developer saying, this is what will make me money and will be beneficial, and it will be us as a city saying it will make sense for us financially as well. So we do have a vision. We've had plans, sometimes decades worth of plans. The last one's a good one.
Richard?
Well, yes, I'm very much a proponent of the South Catalyst project. I'm also very disappointed at where it sits right now. I think Cecil and the council have had a very good vision. They got this thing started, but it's tough. A little history. It took the assemblage of 30 separate parcels of real estate to assemble the campus where we now sit today. In the 1980s, that was a very contentious, long project. Well, it takes time. I think we cannot tell the county what they're going to put in their building. But I do feel that the county is acting like we're the stepchildren of Fort Collins. Our voters supported by a 70% mandate that the county put the building downtown. Well, I think the county keeps begging off on it and saying, we're going to put it where we have parking, out in the sugar beet field. I don't think that's good leadership by the county, and I think our council needs to buckle down and get the job done.
Patrick.
I think having a thriving downtown is good for any city, and I think when you have a combination of government, business, and entertainment downtown, I think it's good. I have a tendency to agree with some of my other colleagues that are up here that I think Rich said the county failed in leadership. I think the city failed in leadership. I think we sat back and we may have had a vision. But one thing I know as a leader is that if you have a vision, you have to extol that vision onto your people, and then you have to inspect what you expect of them. I believe our city council has not inspected what they expected. So yes, I do believe we should have a thriving downtown. I do believe we should have a county building downtown, but not at any cost. It has to be a county building that's going to be collaborative of what we have, or we need to find private developers that'll bring something downtown that'll draw people down there.
Leah.
Great. Well, in regards to the South Catalyst project and downtown in general, you know, a vibrant downtown is really the heart of any community. And as Cecil alluded to, there have been a decade and perhaps decades and decades of plans on how to revitalize downtown Loveland. And so certainly these things take time. And the South Catalyst project has certainly taken time, and there has been a lot of thought and vision and process. And I think today we are in a place where we as a community and as a city can really define what we want that project to be with a developer. When the developer comes in and says, this is what will make me money, and as a city we can say, this is what will make us money, and this is a value to our community. And so I think we're in a great opportunity to move forward on that for the South Catalyst project. In regards to the county building, I think that we need to continue to make sure we're having collaborative conversations. So frequently it seems that these conversations are broken down in the fact that there's not strong relationships. So whether it's the blame of leadership from the
Leah,
city—
I need to stop you. Sorry. John, I'm going to begin with you and ask a question about affordable housing. What is the city doing, and what should the city do to assure people can afford to live near where they work? Rocky Mountain Center for Innovation and Technology at the airport, which is the old HP site at the airport, downtown Loveland near the hospital, Centera, etc.
Well, one of the biggest problems with affordable housing in our community today was really wrought upon us by the State House. I don't know the bill number off the top of my head, but about 5-6 years ago, the state of Colorado decided to put in bills that basically allow litigators, in other words, lawyers, to file class action suits on behalf of townhome owners and condominium owners. It's called construction defect litigation. It's completely stopping up the affordable housing market in Loveland and everywhere else throughout the state. I just recently have been working with the Board of Realtors to move some litigation into the Loveland's purview because the city can actually override some of that legislation by doing something locally. What it basically means is we can't build condominiums in Loveland. We can't build townhomes in Loveland because everybody, from the developer to the architect to the guy that dug for the sewer, could get sued if anything goes wrong with no caps, no limits, and they could be sued by 1 out of 100 owners, all by themselves. That's stopping our affordable housing gap and causing it.
Thanks. Don.
I agree with John. That's a major concern that I've heard from builders as well as realtors. I think it's not the role of the government to provide affordable housing, but it's the role of the government to do everything possible to help make affordable housing available. I think by looking at our building process, our permitting, and our fee structure, we should seek to make that as low cost as possible because that's reflected in the cost of, in the ultimate cost of the homes. I think we should let the free market help dictate what's built and how it's built. Every time the government gets involved in trying to dictate, such as rent control, bad things happen to people. So I think we should let the government should do what it can to reduce the costs for builders. It should streamline the process as much as possible. And then the legislation that John was mentioning, we definitely have to take a look at that and try to get that repealed.
Thanks. Ralph?
I agree that the condo crisis has to be solved. It's been complicated. It's become entrenched. There are some good examples of other communities around the state of Colorado who have experienced some successes along the lines that John already mentioned. I would support Loveland being part of that effort. I think we have to continue to celebrate the successes of the few programs that we have in place that are working very well. The Loveland Habitat for Humanity program that the city puts a lot of resources behind has been very successful. I think we have to find those partnerships. We have to prioritize and leverage what we have as city resources to fill the gaps that do often exist and cannot be entirely solved by free market theory, but have to be addressed by the harsh realities of what is happening in our community, and do the best that we can.
Cecil?
Yeah, I agree with the problem. We do have a problem with the construction defect laws that because most of the entry-level housing is in those condos and townhomes, and so we've got to figure out how we can solve that construction defects law. But I also agree with Ralph. We're doing some things. Probably from my perspective, the very best program we've got out there that we're helping fund is that Habitat for Humanity, and that's not. I want people to understand that's not free housing. That is not subsidized housing. That is true affordable housing project. There are other issues. It gets tough to try to figure out how to solving that affordable housing problem is probably beyond the scope of this particular council. I hate to say it that way, but we can sure help, but we can't solve it completely.
Richard?
Well, I think affordable housing is a very big concern. The real estate market now is booming, and it has caused real hardships. We've in Loveland had a very active Loveland Housing Authority, and I think they've built some tremendous resources and projects in Loveland. Art Space downtown is being administered by them, and that's an example of giving affordable housing for artists and creative sector folks. We have a very active housing commission, and I think we need to pay attention to them, listen to them, give them the resources hopefully they need. I was president of Habitat for Humanity when they acquired their thrift store up there that generates $600,000 a year, and that's been a wonderful program where the city gives lower fees, and then the folks are able to work on their homes and buy them. I think we also need to address the very bottom of that market, and that's homelessness. I think the homeless problem is one.
I need to stop you. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Patrick?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of people talk about Habitat for Humanity, homelessness, and everything else here. I think one of the simplest ways to create more affordable housing is to take a look at some of the capital expansion fees that we have right now. We currently have developers that are paying $30,000 before they even drive the first nail. That cost is being directly sent on to the homeowner itself. If we can take a look at those capital expansion fees right now that we have that don't help growth in this city, lower those fees, it'll lower the cost of the housing itself, and we can drive the housing costs down until we look at that. So we can look at a lot of other things, but you want affordable housing? Take a look at our fees. Make them a little bit more reasonable and allow the developers to come in and build the affordable housing that they can without charging them an arm and a leg before they even start.
Leah?
Yeah, certainly having a place to call home, a safe place, is an important part of any community, and being able to live where you work is also important. I think many of my colleagues up here have alluded to the fact that the city does things well in the realms of affordable housing. Habitat, I've actually worked with the local Habitat affiliate here and now actually work with habitats all across the state of Colorado and this country. And so I know how great those chapters are. The Art Space Project is another great. But I think we need to talk about achievable housing, as I mentioned before. And I think that there are many ways to address this. Yes, CEFs are one of those, but I think we need to look at the whole development package. Look at how we are, our building codes decrease lot size and increase density. Disperse some of our CEF funds and raw water so developers don't necessarily have to pay those directly up front. So we can help create some of those affordable housing here in Loveland. Thank you.
Buddy.
Yeah, the question on affordable housing, mine I'll kind of, Leah used the term achievable housing. I'm going to call it, it's housing that is affordable. We do not have any entry-level homes in this city. It is a very complex question. We've got an issue with CEFs, as Pat pointed out. I've been over that topic for 8 years with our city staff about how they're put together, what they're considered of, what are the pieces of those, and challenge them on a regular basis. Our permitting process, what it costs to get a permit issued, is extremely difficult. The time, the process to get through the development review process is absolutely ugly in this town, and we have an organizational cultural issue that must be changed within developmental services that includes the building department in order to not say no to things versus how to get things done and help developers to do it. That relates to time, that relates to the value of money, that relates to the time we get homes built and the cost. Come here Monday night on the 14th and hear about CEFs at 4 o'clock. City staff's doing a presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, Don, I'm going to begin with you with a question on conflict of interest. How would you decide if a conflict of interest exists when you are to vote on a matter that affects an individual, company, political party, or other organization that donated directly to your campaign or that donated to outside entities that campaigned on your behalf?
Well, I think first our conflict of interest policies that we all sign are pretty clear on what we should do regarding accepting money and where we have a potential conflict, whether we're candidates or when we take office. I find it hard to believe that $115 is going to buy my vote. Really find it hard to believe. And to sit here and sort through a question, hypothetically, of going through and trying to understand if 100 people donate to my campaign from all different types of walks of life, that $115 is going to swing my vote. I go back to what I said before. Do what's right, not just what's legal, what's ethical and what's moral. Do it the right way, respecting all parties involved, and be fair to all people. That's how I would evaluate those situations.
Ralph.
Thank you, Marna. There are a lot of traps and pitfalls that you can run into when you're running for city council and after you've been elected. Conflict of interest is one of them. It's imperative on anyone who wants to be part of council, and particularly after being elected, to know what the law is, to spend the time to read the guidebooks, to consult with the city attorney. If something comes up, that's one of the first phone calls that you do want to make, is to talk to the city attorney. When in doubt, it's very simple. You recuse yourself from that question. You walk out of the room. You don't try and influence anybody else on the council. And certainly during campaign season, we have to be wary of outside influences, of interference from people who should not be interfering with our elections.
Cecil.
Yeah, I think the first two respondents have hit it pretty well. I have always had a policy of not accepting campaign donations except from individuals, period. So again, that makes it pretty easy to avoid that conflict of interest. But I also know that when there have been people who have come before our council for whatever reason, I have always consulted the city attorney to make sure that if I have a conflict of interest, and will gladly recuse myself if there's any opportunity for that appearance. I think it's all a matter of doing what's right.
Richard.
I have not received any contributions from any thing except individuals. And again, I think the $115, our city charter forbids political parties from donating directly to us or certain other entities. I think last night we had an orientation for prospective council folks, and it was laid out very specifically by the city attorney. And I think the key is whenever you feel you might have some conflict of interest, that you address it first, maybe by calling the city attorney's office, talking to the city attorney, and laying it out, and then taking direction from there. I personally have no other business in Loveland than my law profession. I don't own any real estate that has potential for development, and I don't anymore represent developers. So I think I would not have a problem serving with the conflict of interest situation. Thank you.
Pat.
Well, since I've donated to myself about 80% of my campaign funds, as long as I don't have a conflict with myself, I think I'm okay. My integrity is worth a lot more than $115, as Don said. Hell, I thought the biggest conflict of interest I was going to have was running for city council, and I actually went to the Office of Ethics for the Department of Agriculture to make sure I wouldn't have a problem there. My quick way of saying this is this: if I've got to ask myself if it's wrong, it's time for me to step aside, because the minute I've asked that question, something in there is wrong, so it's time to just step back. I work with $1 million contracts on a yearly basis. There are times I have a really good relationship with contractors, and there's a lot of times that I recuse myself from a contract bid just because I don't even want the thought of conflict of interest to be out there. That's the same integrity I bring to the council.
Leah.
Yeah, so I believe that the integrity of this starts with us as candidates. And we all know that there is going to be third-party money coming into these elections. And so I think as candidates, we need to hold ourselves accountable to those monies coming in. And while we can't directly coordinate with them, we can hold them accountable for negative attacks and negative information that they send out in our community. And so what I would actually vow is myself that if any third-party money that comes into this race, I will stand up and refute that. And I would actually call on my opponent, Mr. Myers, to stand up with me too, maybe in a press conference, if any third-party negative money comes into our campaigns, and say, this is not what Loveland is about. This is not what Loveland politics are about. So what do you say, Mr. Myers? Would you stand up with me and refute third-party money?
I need to understand what you're talking about totally, because I haven't had any discussions of you.
I haven't either. I just wanted to make sure. Would you refute any with me?
I don't know about freedom of speech. I don't know about anybody putting any money in. I've got to wait.
So Leah, I need to cut this off right now, but Buddy, it is your turn to answer the question.
Yeah, in regards to what the question was, in regards to how would you recuse yourself or hold the integrity of the office if someone came before you that made a campaign donation? Having served 8 years on the Planning Commission, I understand how that works extremely well. That if you've had a business relationship, a personal relationship with someone that you believe or you think it may impact your ability to make a decision within the confines of the law and the city code that's laid out, then you should recuse yourself. If you're unclear and you want to make sure whether or not it is, you speak to our city attorney. She will advise you. The same thing in regards to if you're on the city council. If you believe that there is an issue, in order to maintain the integrity of this office and the integrity of the council, recuse yourself, step away from it, and let the vote go on without you. I've sat before the Securities and Exchange Commission taking a company public, and I understand fiduciary responsibility to the stockholders of a company. The city of Loveland and the citizens are no different than the stockholders in a firm. Thank you.
John.
Well, many times over the course of the 4 years I've sat up here, I've had to recuse myself because, quite honestly, in 44 years, I've developed at least half a dozen friends in this community. And when they come before this council, I will recuse myself. I will step outside. I will tell the other councilors that they're a friend. I've had to do it on the Historic Preservation Commission. I've had to do it sitting at this dais. Okay? But the one thing I don't want to see happen when it comes to recusal, everybody up here is very right. It's for $115, you can't buy anything. But in our political system, groups as a whole, whether it be, whatever group it might be, they have a right to have a voice too. So these challenges that are being thrown back and forth up here concern me greatly, because I don't want to take your vote away from you, nor do I want to take the voice away from groups that choose to speak in this campaign. And I don't even know if there are any. In the last one, there certainly were. They spoke loudly, and they had every right to do so.
Thanks, John. So, Ralph, I'm going to start with you, ask you a two-part food tax question. What's your position on repealing the tax on food for home consumption? One, part A. Part B, if that were repealed, how would you compensate for the lost revenue?
There have been a lot of surprises in the last 4 years that could not possibly have been predicted when I first sought election and was put into office. The food tax was probably the most difficult, the most complicated, the most up and down, back and forth, hard to track, hard to tell where it was and what we were trying to vote on. At a personal level, I have never approved of the sales tax on food. Procedurally, I think I voted in favor of more efforts to peel back the food tax at a gradual rate, but I could not support, more devastating, more draconian, more damaging efforts. I think that Loveland can accomplish just about anything in moderation and in a deliberate fashion. I still believe that there may be opportunities so long as the city's finances remain strong, that in a gradual manner we can remove the food sales tax from the city budget.
I need to stop you. Thanks. Cecil.
Yes, the food tax. We're going through the budget process right now. We are looking at trying to figure out how to add almost $9 million into streets. Highway 34, various other streets, getting 37th. We've talked up here about east-west traffic, getting 37th Street pushed all the way through at 287. So here's, to me, where we're at with the food tax. That has to be thrown into the mix. If we decide as a council and that happens to be one of the priorities, something else has to come off the priority list. There's X number of dollars, there's X number of things you can do with those dollars, and if the food tax goes to the top of the priority ahead of streets and traffic and those things, then so be it. But that's a prioritization issue.
Richard.
As a political science major years ago in college, we were discussed and studied the issue of taxation, and particularly we were focusing on sales tax. And it was, at that time, this is several years back, deemed to be a pretty regressive tax. And I've held that feeling through most of my lifetime. As this came up here recently and all the debate back and forth, I've changed my opinion. I would not be in favor of repealing our sales tax. I think the food stamps have gone a long way for helping that lower income group. There are also rebate things on your income tax returns. And I think for the vast, vast majority of our citizens, paying a little bit at the grocery store on this food is not an onerous problem. And those that are of very low means, they're being addressed, and it's taken care of for them.
Patrick.
Something we can disagree on. I think the food sales tax is regressive. I think it's repressive, and I think it's repulsive in and of itself. I believe there's ways of finding funding out there that we can do something with. I believe there's about $2.1 million set in the city budget right now to do a design for a police training center that the line police officers don't even want. We can take a look at the budget that's out there, and we can find a different way to do it than to take money out of the citizens' hands for food when they're out there buying it. One of the most repulsive things I ever heard was somebody say, people are used to paying it, we can leave it go. That's not how taxes work. The tax was there for a reason, let it go back to the people. Find the money somewhere else.
Leah?
Yeah, I concur with many of my other colleagues up here that, sales tax in general is a regressive tax. And so, I would be in favor of the first year looking at cutting it by 0.75%. I think that the city can absorb that approximate $1.5 million cut from, finding cuts within our budget. That's very reasonable. And then the increase in revenue we will receive from the increase in property values from property taxes in our community. So from there, I think that looking at it in a fiscally responsible manner every single year and trying to find where we can absorb those costs in our community is important. But I think we need to make sure that we're not doing it recklessly, but being very intentional and making sure we're holding true to the fiscally sound budget that we have in Loveland that, as has been mentioned earlier this evening, is the envy of many other communities in Colorado.
Buddy.
Yeah, I actually spoke on the food sales tax repeal. I am viciously nauseated, to use Pat's term, about food sales tax, because on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's one of the lowest level needs that all human beings share in common. Air, food, water, shelter, sleep, warmth to survive, and we're taxing that. I support the idea of walking it down slowly, but I don't know how many citizens realize in 1997, the council in place at that time passed a resolution that $500,000 a year for every sales tax dollar would go to roads. I sat through the budget decrease, nor did I see anything about that 500 grand. 1983, we passed a 1% increase to pay for Chilson, pay for roads, pay for the library improvements. 86, we decided not to sunset it and let it go on in 90. Council 97 said no because there was supposed to have been 1/3 of all food sales tax collected to roads. I don't know where that 500 grand is. I would support reduction, roads being last.
I need to stop you, thanks. John?
Well, I didn't start the food tax debate. I certainly kicked that ball down the path rather heartily about 4 times. 4 different initiatives that I brought before this council, forced this council to vote on the food sales tax initiative. We had it overturned, and then we changed our mind. And when I say we, I always mean we. There are 9 of us sitting up here. We don't make decisions by ourselves. I absolutely support getting rid of food sales tax under one condition. It has to be done slowly so as not to adversely impact the city budget. Slowly, I'm not sure what that looks like. We can all discuss that. It'll be a discussion held by 9 people. Some of them may be sitting here right now. And I hope that we can get a motion going next year on food sales tax again. But I don't want to take it another 6 months of our lives beating our head on the wall. If the citizens want it, that's what we need to do. So I'd absolutely support it.
Don?
I don't think any of us like taxes, but taxes are necessary. We have expenses to operate and pay for the city. I think what we're concerned about is when we believe our taxes are not fair and that their dollars aren't being well invested, and answering the question, are we getting fair value for the taxes we're paying? That doesn't really answer the food tax question. I find it immoral, so do the right thing. It's not that difficult. Repeal the food tax. Now, we want to do it the right way, though, and I agree with the other counselors and candidates up here. Let's take a look at the real numbers of the budget. And why does the budget always increase consistently year after year after year? Why don't we take a serious look at what we're doing and determine what we no longer need to do and eliminate that from the budget? Maybe the money's there. Pat, or one of the other counselors, mentioned the police department, $14 million shared facility. I really question the need for that facility, which isn't the question on the table, but again, it's tax dollars.
Thanks so much. Cecil, we're back to you, and I have a parking question. There's a perception that downtown Loveland does not have sufficient parking. If you agree with this perception, are you able to suggest solutions? If you don't agree with this perception, how might you counter that perception?
Yeah, parking has been a topic of discussion, I think, in every downtown that I'm aware of, and I think it is. Here's what I think is interesting is that when people shop in downtowns, they expect to find the parking spot directly in front of the store they're going to. When they go to a shopping center, they're willing to walk the equivalent of 2 or 3 blocks to get to the big box store. So we have a large number of parking spaces downtown, but as we continue to grow in the downtown, we will need to continue to address additional parking. And that will always be an interesting discussion because you have 2 ways to do it. Scrape a ton of buildings and you do surface parking, or you build a parking garage. There's only 2 ways to deal with it. So that discussion and how we're going to pay for it is always interesting.
Richard.
Well, with the discussion of the South Catalyst project, I mean, it became very apparent that the county is requiring 200 spaces just for their building. This can only be addressed and handled by building a parking garage. Now, the city of Loveland has been giving higher density unit developers like Lincoln Place on Lincoln and the Brinkman Project Gallery Flats, they give them a benefit. The developer has to pay in to the treasury of the city monies that are then deferred later for the building of a parking garage. This money has been sitting there, it's been accumulating. I think we need to finally build a parking garage in the South Catalyst area with revenue bonds. Those are self-paying off bonds. The city of Fort Collins has 2 beautiful facilities. We all know where they are. We all use them. They're very economical. The city of Boulder has them. This isn't rocket science. This is addressing the problem. To some extent, it's an image problem. We need to solve the image.
Thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're even going to get down to the end of the table on this question, but I tend to agree with Cecil. I think it's a perception that there's no parking down there right now. I think people have a tendency of wanting to pull up in front of a facility they want to go to, and they want to park there, and it's not there. Drive around onto 5th Street, park there, walk through the alleys, you'll be able to get to where you need to go to. As we start to build up downtown, parking is definitely going to become a problem down there, and I believe a parking garage is the best way to do it. Should the city pay for the parking garage? Not 100%. I think we need to do a partnership out there. If it's with the county doing a third, the Downtown Association doing a third, and us doing a third, that's one way of looking at it. But we definitely do need to look at it as we continue to build downtown.
Leah.
Again, I think this might be something we're all in agreement on up here. I certainly think with downtown, it's really about changing the mentality that people are coming to downtown as a destination, not one specific place. And so, but as things continue to grow and become vibrant, more businesses and more jobs are located down there, absolutely addressing a future parking problem is important. And I think Pat's suggestion about, how we pay for it is important, because I think that anytime we're looking at, public infrastructure, finding innovative ways to use public dollars, private dollars, and to leverage each other is really a very great idea, and I would be in support of that.
Buddy.
Yeah, I've heard the term, perception. There's a parking. We've got a lot of parking in different places. Perception is reality. And the citizens I speak to, they say it's difficult to park in downtown. There's an event at the Rialto. You've got to park not 2 blocks, not 3 blocks, but maybe 6 blocks away. And you're coming out at nighttime and walking in the downtown area, and they don't feel safe, to be quite honest. Folks that live on the various streets may complain that there are cars parked in front of their homes, denying their access. If we're going to build and we're going to bring businesses downtown, we're going to bring employment to that downtown area, we need to get ahead of that power curve, or we will be bailing water from now to whenever it gets completed, and then we'll be looking for the next facility. Rich mentioned there's money that's been contributed. Let's figure out, get off the middle of the dime. This thing's been kicked down the down the road, this can, for at least 6 to 7 years that I'm aware of. Let's get something moving, figure out if we do it with revenue bonds, but quit talking about it and start executing towards a plan to get something done. Thank you.
John.
It's very simple. Downtown Loveland has stopped growing. If you don't believe it, ask a realtor. Most realtors that I know have people that would love to move shops and stores into downtown Loveland, and there simply is no space. If you drive down through it, most everything is full except for a few buildings that have some serious challenges, and they're not going to fill up right away. So downtown has stopped growing. If we like it is, great. I'd like to see it grow. It's not a matter of when or if. It's a matter of how wide and how tall the parking garage needs to be, because we simply have stopped growing, and a community that stops growing in their downtown core dies.
Don.
If I take 10 seconds, do I get 50 seconds later?
We just used it up.
We need a parking garage. How we fund it, how we go about it, we need a parking garage if downtown's going to grow. It's easy for me. I walk downtown every day and have lunch, or virtually every day. But for anybody that's driving down there, if we want to be an attractive community and develop the downtown area so it's a strong and vibrant, we simply have to make the decision to do it. How we go about doing it the right way, we need time to study that, but let's commit to doing it.
Ralph.
The perception and the difficulties of parking spaces versus how many steps it takes to get to the store that you may want to visit are a reality. There's also the reality that the downtown merchants want to see people walking around and have as many possible views of their front door as possible. I think that all of the options for a parking structure on the south end need to be on the table now, and we'll probably have to have options for a parking structure on the north end in the near future. It's a strategic necessity and an opportunity to lock in new development, to lock in high-density mixed-use development of both residences and businesses. And right now, we've literally got too many acres of downtown dedicated to surface parking lots. Some of those acres need to be transformed into offices, stores, and businesses.
Thanks. Now, Richard, I'm going to start with you with another perception question. There's a perception that there's a disconnect between the Loveland Police Command staff and the rank and file personnel. What is your thinking on that perception? Is that something that, if you agree that this perception is reality, what would you do about it?
Well, the study that came back recently from a police entity, the professional organization, I believe it was, indicated that there were apparent legitimate concerns by the rank and file about the administration. And that, you know, I was surprised by that. We've had some difficult situations involving criminal involvement in prosecution against one of the staff members, officers, and I think that communication is probably a problem. I have spoken with some folks that are on the police advisory board, and they, you know, they feel that Chief Hecker is doing a good job, and
I need to stop you, thanks. Pat.
I'm going to steal one from Buddy, perception's reality. I spent 22 years of my life in the Marine Corps, and when you've got a problem with rank and file down below, especially if it's a serious problem as you've got right now, and I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of the rank and file members of the police department, people that are members of the fraternal order police, they have a serious problem with their leadership right now, and they believe that their leadership is not doing what needs to be done around here. In the military, we'd turn around and we'd probably remove the leader and put somebody else in there. Unfortunately, the city council has control of 3 entities: city manager, city attorney, and municipal judge. The city manager is the one who has the control over the police department, and that's the person the city council needs to hold accountable for what's going on down there. So the first conversation I would have would be with our city manager to figure out what we can do to fix this problem.
Leah.
There is nothing more important in a community than public safety, and people believe they're safe until they don't believe they're safe. And so I think that we need to make sure we are addressing any concerns that may be that the rank and file may have. I actually have taken the time to go over to the police department and talk to some of the police officers about their concerns. And yes, there may be some challenges within the organization, certainly communication. They feel resources are very limited. They're working very hard, long hours, as crime increases in our community. And so I do believe that it's something that we need to make sure that we are addressing very seriously, because should we get to the point where people don't feel safe in our community anymore, we have gone too far. And so now is the time to address this issue before it gets any farther.
Buddy.
Yeah, I've read the same report everybody else read. I've also spoken to rank and file officers. I didn't have to go to the police department because of my business interest. They actually sought me out, and I've had some discussions with different officers and with the chief in different areas. You know, those officers, you know, there is that disconnect. Their morale is down. Morale equals that they're not safe on the street. They may not be thinking the way they should, because they go out every night on a shift from their family, or every afternoon, hoping that they come home, because their lives are at risk in the environment they go out in, especially in the climate we live today. And they deserve the best leadership and the best training we can provide. If it is a problem, my direction, with the support of council hopefully, would be to the city manager to bring the parties together. If he has to find a third outside source to come in and determine how bad it is, and do a independent study that is reported directly to city council to resolve it, then that's what needs to be done. Thank you.
John.
I'll start. My answer will be twofold. First of all, in any organization involving 100 employees, and 100 employees over a course of 50 years, if you don't have a couple of problems, you're simply not pushing hard and doing your job. But I don't worry about the couple of problems. I worry about the other 98 people and how it affects them, because they're the ones that we want their head held high, protecting us in the community on a day-to-day basis. When I read the study, I guess I'd see a little bit more into it than some of my colleagues up here. The things that I get from the study: too much overtime, bad scheduling. They don't want to work all that overtime, and the lack of staff on the street, the lack of officers on the street. City Council took action on Tuesday night to at least move forward as we can to solve those problems. Currently, they're in process of hiring 6 or 7 new not traffic officers, but patrol officers.
Don, I'm
So
sorry,
it's moving along.
Don.
The report was issued in June of 2015, and I regret I don't have the page of notes that I wanted to bring with me on that report. I've spoken to over 6 officers while walking and canvassing the neighborhood, as well as meeting them in retail places. There's a great deal of concern regarding application of policy and how discipline is handled. I heard there's a real concern over turnover. However, I don't have the numbers, so I can't speak directly to that. What really concerned me is that they have the rank and file has a lack of leadership satisfaction, anywhere from 60 to 82%. Only the sergeants were under 50% with an approval rating, and they had a very high rating. But lieutenants, captains, and the chief scored poorly. I don't know why, but I think it's something we have to look into. They also feel, a very high percentage of them, that their concerns are not being voiced upwards and reaching the council adequately. They feel they're not being heard. There's nothing worse for an employee than not being heard.
Ralph.
For the last year, I've been helping the Fraternal Order of Police and the Colorado Legislature deal with the issue of post-traumatic stress disorder among law enforcement personnel. I also know that many years ago, the rank and file from top to bottom of the police department participated in the police staffing study, asking for more officers. Exactly the points that John was making. What I am concerned about with the current situation is twofold. Number one, how did an internal survey of the Fraternal Order of Police get leaked to the media, and what has been the resulting politicization and extravagant use of that material? I think there are indicators of challenges within the organization. There always are. It's not easy to be in a command position in any organization that involves the potential impacts of violence and the enforcement of our laws. I think that the correct actions are being taken. We need to be patient and see them completed.
Cecil.
Yes, and I'm going to agree with John and maybe continue to expound a little bit with what John started. Two big issues that I saw coming out of that staff report or that police report. Staffing is a big one, and then how the discipline was being taken care of within the organization. Communication, and I guess I'll use a good quote from a movie. A lot of it here, I think, is a great quote from a great movie I've enjoyed all my life. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And I think that's what's happened between the command staff and the people on the ground. And so I think the biggest issue that command staff has to take care of is dealing with that communication. But we got to be very careful. When I hear people say that they're going to get involved directly with solving this issue, because our city charter says no for a reason.
Okay, thanks. So Pat, I'm going to change the topic now.
I wanted a perception question.
No, well, I got some data in here.
Okay.
People living near drilling sites have reported illness, property damage, and disruption of water sources. Weld County residents close to extraction sites have reported a 20% decrease in property values, which means taxes go down as well. Please suggest ways to mitigate these effects in Loveland.
I didn't know we had wells being drilled in Loveland. You talking about oil wells?
So everyone's looking at me as if I've asked a question that I shouldn't, and apparently I have.
No, there's an answer to that question.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'm not from Loveland,
the
and
question
so,
again.
okay. So for oil and gas drilling, when there are concerns about property taxes and health effects, et cetera, how would you mitigate those effects?
I think some ways you could mitigate the effects is take a look at if we do allow drilling in the city itself, if drilling does occur in here, of what we're going to do to lessen the impact of what's going on. I think the mineral rights are pretty well set out in law, that somebody has the right to go down for their minerals itself, but you do have to look after what's going out there. I've got a brother right now that runs an oil field up in Wellington County, up in Wellington, and they do everything they can to work with the homeowners out there to try and mitigate any type of noise that happens out there to keep the sites cleaned up. So I think if we have a continued conversation with those businesses, ask them to continue to work with the people out there, I think we can work on that. I think it's shown in other areas that it's working just fine. A lot of people don't want them in their backyard. A lot of people don't want a lot of things in their backyards, and sometimes you get them. But if you sit down and you do a collaboration of the business and the people that are out there, I think you can find a good, solid solution with it, and they're out there.
Leah.
As someone whose husband actually worked in the oil field for some time, I understand both the economic impact and the environmental impact of these. Obviously, oil rigs are very well regulated at the state level, and from a community level, I think that having communications about how we're responsibly integrating energy into our community is important. And so, much to Pat's point, I think having those memorandum of understandings with the operators to ensure that we are navigating this concern for people in our community in a way that alleviates that concern, but also acknowledges the economic impact of drilling that is in our community. So
I need to ask you to turn that off right now. Thank you. Excuse us. Buddy.
Right now, we have within our municipal code under Title 18, it's 1878 that talks about setbacks from properties and where oil drilling facilities can be at from new development. There's also a piece that talks about how it impacts existing homes. There's actually some good discussions going on between the city staff, members of the council, in regards with the state about how to correct and properly place oil applications and oil drilling facilities around the city of Loveland. Most of the resources that relate to the city of Loveland within the Wattenberg Plaza area, basin, set to the south side of 402. Some of the creative thoughts that are being thrown around is, let's set up an energy park so that the rigs can set outside the city limits or at least a distance back from 402, and using things like horizontal drilling, you avoid the issues of damaging property values, and you make it more available for drilling and for the development of those precious assets we have below ground. So there's a lot of things going on that need to be looked at. Work with the state is a big deal because they are the overbearing 800-pound gorilla in the room. Thank you.
John.
One of the questions that got asked early on is somebody's not aware of any drilling that's going on in Loveland. That's correct, but there are over 100 previously drilled well sites in this town that sit today. 20 plus of them are actively producing oil and natural gas on a daily basis. This is a great thing because it reduces our necessity to do foreign imports, and we're seeing a shift in our country, a major shift away from importing money, or excuse me, importing oil and sending our money to the people that really want to just kill us. The other part of it is I'm proud to be in the only community in the Front Range that didn't spend $500,000 or $1 million trying to fight this foolish effort of fracking. We allow fracking here. We have the most stringent rules in the state of Colorado. The 9 counselors that sat at this dais for the last 2 years created those rules. They're in place, and there will be drilling, and it'll be done well here in Loveland.
Don.
I agree with John. State law has been in place to make sure that the drilling activities are done safely. Yes, mistakes happen, accidents happen, but accidents happen on the highway, so we don't stop driving. But I think the laws are in place. I'm glad the city of Loveland did not go against state and incur unnecessary expense. And I have a great deal of confidence in our state and the industry and our city working together to ensure that the economic resources are developed and done so safely.
Ralph.
Loveland's in a better position than we were in the spring of 2012 when a group of neighbors came to me and said, we're hearing something about drilling rigs and this thing called fracking. What does it mean for us, for our neighborhoods, for our homes, for our schools, for our businesses? I'm glad that the Loveland City Council came together and put in a pause so that the development department, so that the fire department could catch up and resolve the issue of, no, we don't have plans and programs and equipment in place to be able to deal with the hazards of oil drilling or to be able to deal with drilling pads. I think that we are on the right track with what we have put in place. There are issues to be resolved at the state level. I think there's great promise in what Buddy and I saw this morning of possibly turning our city processes towards actual risk analysis of the true hazards specific to every drilling site as those applications and as that production comes to Loveland. We're stronger now. We must always be stronger.
Cecil.
Yes, I will. I want to say one thing that I will disagree with John on one, and that is that he said we had the most stringent rules in the state, and I would beg to differ with him on that because our rules are voluntary. They have to be. So I wouldn't agree with that. But here's the thing. We have the opportunity this fall in October, and I have been spending the last 2 months attending one meeting after another with the COGCC. There will be a rulemaking opportunity this fall on both rules, and the idea that we are needing to take a look at, because all of our drilling will be on really impacted on our rural areas and our growth management areas. We need to get in on the first part of the discussion when that driller goes to the COGCC to say we want to permit, so that we have an opportunity to discuss with them ahead of time where those wells are placed and how we can mitigate all of those health issues.
Richard.
Our city home rule charter specifically provides that if a matter is of local concern only, our city council has the discretion and the ability to pass laws and do things of a wide nature. cities get into trouble when they try to legislate and do things that are of statewide concern. And that's what the city of Fort Collins and that's what the city of Longmont have found when they created these moratoriums. I think our city council and the city legal staff did the right thing. And it's kept us out of protracted litigation, costly litigation. Drilling and fracking is essentially a statewide concern. That is because otherwise the oil companies would have to be regulated by what? 300 municipalities. I think I agree with Cecil that we're at the table negotiating our staff with the oil companies on a voluntary basis and doing the things we can legally.
So candidates, now it's time to start wrapping up. I'm going to ask you all for concluding remarks. You have a minute to summarize or give concluding remarks. We're going to start on the right this time with Ralph. Go ahead.
Once again, thank you, Marna. Thank you, League of Women Voters, and everybody who took your Thursday night to come into these chambers and hear all of us talk. You will probably never see another assembly where so many of us have to concisely present ourselves and not drone on and on and on. I'm asking the voters of Ward 4 to once again put their trust in me and charge me as your city councilor for another 4 years. Keep me working for you, keep me working for all of Loveland to keep our city strong and to take us to the next level.
Don.
Thank you. And thanks for having us this evening. I spent 40 years leading businesses. I led businesses for one reason. By serving business, by serving all stakeholders, people prospered. People gained jobs, people's incomes went up, people's families were cared for. It added to the fabric of society. I promise to bring those same skills, collaborative spirit, trust building, doing the right thing the right way, working with people, problem-solving skills so that we can get things done, not just have activity, but produce results. I'm an action person about getting things done. Thank you.
John.
To be a city councilor in the city of Loveland is truly an honor. If you want to know what we've accomplished, go downtown on Friday night, any Friday night. When I grew up as a young man in this community, you could have shot a cannon off in downtown Loveland on Friday night and not hit a soul. Downtown's on its way, and it's going to prosper big time. The next thing is we need to maintain our economic competitiveness in the world with the broadband initiative. And the fourth thing I want to talk about is the Downtown Development Authority. If you live in that area, if you work in that area, talk about it with your peers, because we want to return control from this dais to the appointed body of the people that live and work in downtown Loveland. That's what those initiatives are on your ballot about this year. Thank you for the greatest compliment I could have ever received by not having an opponent in this race.
Buddy.
Yeah, Marna, I want to thank you tonight for being our moderator and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and the citizens that showed up this evening to listen to our opinions and our answers to the questions that were posed from you and from the League. We're at a real crossroads in our city. We are growing extremely quickly. We have a set of challenges that are before us, and we have a set of unique solutions that we're able to apply if we look at the broad problem of the city. The way to make the entire city profitable, a pleasant place to live in, and not get singularly focused on one key issue, one key area, what I call chasing the shiny ball, student body right, student body left, let's go after this, let's go after that, but focusing broadly on the entire city for its prosperity, its quality of life, and opportunities for companies to bring jobs, $60,000 or more, which it takes to live here for young people, and that will drive this thing called tax dollars. Thank you.
Leah.
Yes, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and everyone who came out tonight as well. Running for city council is something that feel very passionately about. We are at a crossroads in our community, and I do believe that we're in a place where we need to make sure we're having respectful conversations about how to move our community forward. As you might be able to tell, I represent a little different demographic and type of candidate, and I feel that I can bring a fresh perspective, a different perspective, and one that perhaps gives a little bit of a youthful edge to our community and represents those families who are in those jobs, represents those families that are struggling to get by with that barely making $60,000 a year in this community. I represent those families. And so I'm asking the voters of Ward 2 to support my candidacy because I believe in this community and I will always be the person who puts Loveland first. Thank you.
Pat.
My thanks to the League of Women Voters for having us here. I'm very humbled by your invite, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to sit here in front of the citizens of Loveland and actually express my ideas and my thoughts of what can take us forward. I sit before you as a person who believes that service is an honor. I think giving back is something that everybody should do. It's something that we were taught as kids, that I was taught as kids, a lot of us were, and I think it's lost out there. What I offer to the city of Loveland is a person who will bring fresh thoughts, fresh focus, and strong leadership that I believe is needed to help us get into the future and to continue forward. For that, I'm asking for and requesting the support and the vote of the people of Ward 1 to help us bring that to the city of Loveland. Thank you.
Thank you, League. This is the only forum like this. I think our challenge is how to keep Loveland attractive and how to keep it quaint. We have a lot of people who've come here because of those characteristics, and I think that's a real challenge because everybody wants to come here now. Everybody wants to live here now. And I think my experience with various organizations in this city, my leadership abilities for a proven time, almost 40 years, I can help do this. I think Pat and I are running for the same seat, Ward 1. He and I do disagree on the downtown catalyst project. I think the city has had a vision, and I think you do have to assemble those parcels in order to move forward. I think this campus is an example of that. I think that except for serving our nation in armed services, giving back and serving as a public servant in an elected capacity is the highest honor someone can be given. So I hope you vote for me for Ward 1.
Cecil.
Thank you. One of the things that happens is that we see the controversial issues on the front page of the newspaper. I sat down, and you'll have to, I was going to list all of these for you tonight, but I'm limited to 1 minute. Of the accomplishments of this city council just in the last in the last several years. You didn't hear about all of those. So what I will tell you is that we are accomplishing things. We are moving forward, and we are on the cusp of doing even greater things, and we just need to continue that momentum. The plans are there, the visions are there. We just need to have that political will to take that next step forward. From my perspective, I agree with John. Thank you. I did, too, receive that great compliment, and I will tell you that the one thing I promise you politically, I will continue to work every bit as hard as I have the last 8 years for you. Thank you.
So now we're at the end of our program. Candidates for mayor and ward seats, thank you so very much for participating and helping your voters better understand what you would do for them. Remember, Election Day is November 3rd, and that this is a mail ballot election. What he said, vote. This forum was produced by Larimer County League of Women Voters and the City of Loveland. League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage informed and active participation in government. We influence public policy through education and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about what we do and learn about volunteer opportunities, ask one of us here tonight, pick up some information, or go to our local website, lwv-larimercounty.org. Please also go to our voter information website, vote411.org. Remember, it has information from all these candidates you've heard tonight. Please remember not to give your ballot to anyone you don't know to turn in for you. Turn it in yourself or only to a trusted person. Please join us in voting on November 3rd. Thank you so much and good night.